Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Advanced React WordPress Theme Development. In this video, you're going to learn about how to add a Mailchimp newsletter subscription. So if you take a look, we're going to learn how to create this subscribe to newsletter form. And over here, it handles errors. If I type something gibberish, it goes ahead and gives me the error. And then I can put the correct email address, let's say codeytek.academy@gmail.com, and then hit submit, sending it, thanks for subscribing. I go back to my Mailchimp audience and you can see that that has been subscribed. Awesome. So let's learn how to do that. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to use this package called React Mailchimp Subscribe. And we're going to install that. It'll say yarn add next Mailchimp subscribe. Let it install it. And let's see how we need to set that up. So the first thing it asks for is the URL. So how do we get the URL? We go to the Mailchimp dashboard, and I'm assuming that you've already created an account with Mailchimp and you set up the campaigns, etc. If not, then go ahead and register it on the Mailchimp.com and then come over here in the dashboard, click on sign up forms. Under sign up forms, we have something called embed forms. We click on select and then we'll scroll down where we see this bunch of code. All we are interested in this form action equals this value. So we're going to copy that, this URL, basically the action URL. We're going to copy that. And it will come to the environment variable file. We'll paste it here for a moment. And then we're going to create an environment variable and we call it next public Mailchimp URL. We set it equal and we set this value over here. Okay. So that's my next public, that's my Mailchimp URL. Next thing we'll do is head over to our layout component, and then inside a footer, we are going to create a component called newsletter subscribe. Okay, in this video I'm not going to be doing a lot of coding, so I'll just teach you how to go ahead and create the newsletter subscription. So it's going to be a really simple one. So I'll click on this PR, the pull request, and go to file changes, and then I'm going to go to this file and click on view file, raw, and just copy it. So you'll get the code from GitHub. Link will be in the description. Ignore this one for now, but let's take a look how we set that up. So it basically asks you to use this Mailchimp subscribe, which we are doing now. We're just importing Mailchimp subscribe from this package that we have just added. And then it accepts the URL, which is this URL. And we've added this Mailchimp URL, process.env next public Mailchimp URL. So this is the URL that we have. You can very well just copy it like this, but I'm just storing that in a variable. Then it takes the render function, which basically needs to render the form for the Mailchimp subscription. So you could very well use just Mailchimp subscribe for the simplest form, only email, but I would like to customize my form in my own way. So that's why I'm using my custom form. But I'm going to pass in everything that we get in the props. So we get subscribe status and message. That's what I'm pulling over here from the props. And then I'm passing all of that information like status, message, and then on validated, I'm passing the form data that's been submitted with the subscribe function. Now let's go ahead and create this component called newsletter form. So I'm going to go back to my pull request, and this is my newsletter form. Just going to click on view file, raw, copy it, and then create another file under footer, and we'll name it as newsletter form. The reason why we're keeping it in footer because we want to keep our newsletter form in the footer. I just pasted this piece of code and I'll explain to you what this is doing. Okay, so I'm going to come back and explain this bit of code, but I've just pasted this form. Let's also include our newsletter subscribe into our footer. So I'm going to go over to my footer. If you've been following along my videos, then you would know all of this code. So we have this footer menus. Just above that, I'll do newsletter, subscribe. That's it. And now if you go back to the front end, you have this nice little form over here. Okay. Now let me explain this form to you. Let's do an inspect element. So under this newsletter form, let's go down at the bottom. It's just returning a form, basically a custom form. You first have the heading. So you have this heading here called subscribe to newsletter. Then you have this input field over here for email. It just has an on change event. So basically we are initializing two state variables. One is for email and second for the error. The reason why we had to initialize our own use state for one error, which was basically in case if the user hasn't entered anything in the input field, which was not being handled by the API. So we went ahead and added that. And now, so this on change event basically is going to call this set email, which we've initialized here. And it's just going to pass the value, of the email of what user has entered over here. Then type email, some class name. We also have the on key up event, so that in case if the user hits enter over here instead of pressing the submit, we still call our handle form submit function, but we check if the key code that's been used is 13, which is enter key. And we also set the error to null, so that in case if there were any existing errors, they clear up and new ones show up in case if there are any. So this calls the set error method over here. So set error function, and then there's button. So this button over here, this one, let's zoom it in. And this button has just a class, and then it has an on click function, handle form submit. And this function basically going to set an error to null in case if the previous one exists, we want to clear them out before the new ones show up. If the user hasn't entered anything, then we just say, please enter a valid email address. Like for example, if I hit enter, you can see now the error message show. So we set the error, and then down at the bottom, just below the form, we are having a bunch of error messages display or success message display. So here, in case if the status equals error or it's our error, which is the empty input field, then we just go ahead and display that message. Notice that I'm using a get message over here. This is a custom function, and the reason for this is because when we get the response, we get 0 as a prefix with a hyphen, and we don't want that. We're just kind of splitting the string from that hyphen and removing that 0 from that. So just trimming it out, and also sanitizing using a sanitize function. Okay, so we just show the error. So that's the error being shown. In case if you hit enter, you can see that that shows the error. Okay, so that's for the error. In case if you type anything else, what would happen is that you can see that there's an API request. Basically, it's using the URL that we had added in the environment variable, which is this one, this environment variable. It's using that. It's passing all of the information it needs to, including the email address, which is here. And this is a GET request. And in the response, it tells us an email address must contain single @ and that's the error message that we get. Notice that it's prefixing this 0 over here with a hyphen, and that's why we are using this GET message function. It's a custom function that we've created, and we are removing and trimming it out this bit of information from here. Okay, so this is when the status becomes an error, and then in that case we get this message in the message, which was being passed from this Mailchimp subscribe props. This message is available, the status is available, status becomes error, and then message becomes this. And once that happens, we go ahead and show the error. There are other bunch of errors also it throws up. So if I put @ and if I put some gibberish, hit enter, you also saw that it was showing sending. That's because status becomes sending, and then we just show this loading at that point. So this loading is our custom component. Let me go ahead and replace that with the loading. So this is our custom loading component. I've made some changes to that and I'm going to explain that to you in a moment. So loading, I have pasted that, just replaced it, and I'll just show you what changes I've made. Basically, if you've been following along my tutorial, I've just improvised our previous loading component, just added content color class and has visibility toggle. The reason for this is because we want a white color over here and earlier it was dark gray. So that's why I've added an additional props color class, so we can pass that color class from top. And then we have also added the has visibility toggle, which means that we don't want to reserve any space for this one, because we are reserving the space for the entire div component, which contains all of the information like status equals sending and error and success message, etc. So we don't want to reserve the space for loading separately. We're just reserving for the whole thing. Okay, so that's the change in this one, and then we're just setting some default color class gray in case if the color is not passed, but in this case we are passing the white color. And then visibility toggle will be true by default, and we are passing false explicitly over here. Okay, so that's your sending loading. And then if you make an error, you can see that you get another request goes, you get the response, domain portion of the email address is invalid. Again, same thing, we are displaying the message. Okay, so let's do a proper one now. So I'm gonna say imranhsayed@gmail.com and submit it. You can see that request goes again. We say thank you for subscribing. We get the message over here. Go back to our Mailchimp, go to the audience dashboard, and then click on view contacts, and there you go. Congratulations, you get imranhsayed@gmail.com subscribed. Awesome. Let's do another one. I'm gonna say sayed@gmail.com, hit it, sending, subscribed, refresh. You can see Sayed has been subscribed. Awesome. If you try to hit it again, you can see that it already exists. So you get the error message, and you also have a link over here. It takes you in case if you want to unsubscribe, you can update your preferences. And that's the response we get from here. You can also style it if you want, style this link if you want, but I'm just leaving it as is. If you don't want to style it, go ahead and style it, send a PR over, and you can contribute to this beautiful Next.js open source project. And because we have this status equals success, and as long as there's no error from the status or empty, then go ahead and show that message, and that's why you're getting that success message over there once it was subscribed. All right, so I hope you did like the video. If you did, please give a thumbs up and do subscribe to my channel if you aren't already, and do star my repository to support my work like all the beautiful 171 people have. And do follow me on GitHub. My GitHub handle is imranhsayed, and my Twitter handle is Codeytek. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.